Yes, that's lavender out my window. Look at the beautiful well. And over there's a pagoda, but you can't really see it. Good morning, sunshine. So I was asked today, why full-time travel? Like, what made me decide to pick up the children, get rid of all my belongings, and start traveling full-time almost 4 years ago? And the truth is that there isn't one answer. There's just so many things that brought me to this point, and today I just kind of wanted to share those things with you, just in case it's something that you might be interested in.
If you're new to my channel, hi, my name is Karen, and my daughters and I have been living on the road for the past 3 years, exploring, working, and learning through discovery.
The first thing would be the idea of living versus surviving. I've been an entrepreneur my whole life, and the 10 years before I actually decided to start traveling, I owned a bakery, and the bakery was really successful. We were on TV, we worked for some amazing people. It went up to making 6 figures. It was really successful, but I had no life. I had no life. I was working all the time. Therefore, I had no time for my children. And back then, the kids were, well, I started the business when the second one was still in my belly. They grew up with me working all the time. And even though I've always been a traveler and we took a lot of vacations and we took a lot of time to bond, most of the time I was working. I was. And eventually my marriage ran out and I got a divorce, and then that meant that it was just me and them, and I took that opportunity to start homeschooling them, which was great. But having a business, there just was not enough time for us to really spend time together, for me to cater to their needs. So that's when I decided that something had to give, something had to change, and that thirst for actually living kind of like sparked this idea of, you know what, we need to sell the business and we need to do something different. And that's when this whole idea of full-time travel came about. So this was December 28th, 2017, and I sold the business, and a couple months later we started traveling full-time, and the sense of freedom that came about because of it was incredible. Now, I'm not saying that there wasn't an adjustment period, and I've spoken about the adjustment period in some of my other videos, but still, like, the idea that I actually got to wake up when I wanted to, I got to work when I wanted to, I got to like breathe and explore and live and decide, have a choice on how to live each day was so important to me, and probably the driving force for it all. Then number 2, and as important as number 1, is my children. They grew up in South Florida, and South Florida is very rich in culture. It's like a melting pot of, you know, Caribbean and Latin, and it has a little bit of everything, but it's almost like a fishbowl, right? Like, you get an experience in South Florida that you do not get anywhere else in the country, maybe even the world. So I felt like they were being pigeonholed in their perception of what the world was like, because they only knew this little piece of the world. So it's really important for me to show them what else was out there. And because they were homeschooling, this was a perfect combination to what we were already doing. At that point, we were doing curriculum work, and you know, as we started entering into history and things like that, that was another area that I felt was lacking, right? We were only going to learn through books and whatever the writer of the book had to offer, his perspective, right? So again, they were being pigeonholed by the amount of information they could gather. So I decided, to me, it was better to actually go out there in the world and experience these things and learn from the people that either experienced it or the stories that were passed down through generations and that kind of thing. Like, one of the first places we went to was New Jersey. That was our first landing point. We were headed towards New York City, but we landed in New Jersey, and we went to the Edison factory museum. The house was closed, but we were able to go into the factory, and a lot of the people that volunteered at this museum had some sort of connection to Edison himself. So the stories they shared were passed down through their family. I mean, maybe they were an employee of his, maybe they were related to him in some way, but the stories were so rich and offered so much more information that you would just get from like reading a book or reading a plaque in a museum. It was just incredible. We got to understand his madness. We got to understand how he thought, how he treated his employees, like layers and layers of information. And you know, I would say that was probably the first time that I knew I was doing the right thing. So number 3 for me would be people. When you're used to just being around a certain kind of person, you become accustomed to their beliefs, to their style of living, to a certain lifestyle. I felt like there was so much more out there to get to know, and this drives my travel experiences. This is what, like, depending on who I want to get to know, how I want to get to know them, the things that I want to experience, that's what helps me decide where we're going to go next. And the people, or getting to know people and getting to know their lifestyles, their reason for doing the things they do, for you know, maybe living humbly instead of fashionably, or all those little details are part of learning. And obviously through me, my kids end up learning as well. But for me, it's really important to get to know the people wherever we go, and it enhances my experience, it enhances my understanding of humanity, it enhances the possibilities beyond the American dream, beyond the white picket fence and the nice house and the nice car. Like, the more I get to understand different lifestyles, the more options I now have. Because I feel like when you're raised a certain way, you think that the only way to be successful is that one thing, right? The one thing that you're told from a young age that will make your life better. And for me, that wasn't the case, because I had a successful business, and you know, I was married, I had the kids, I had the house, and I was not happy. I was very unhappy. I know my ex-husband was unhappy as well. Being able to change that, because we can, has given me a breath. I think sometimes we underestimate the power of breathing. Like, sometimes I feel like I spent 10 years without breathing because I was so anxious about what was next, about getting to the next level, about getting to that point in which I was gonna be okay. But you know what? That point never came. That we never got to that point in which everything was okay. You know, the world is ever changing, things are always changing, and I think being okay, it's rolling with the punches, it's rolling with life. So acquiring a new lifestyle was so freeing to me, and I merit this to the people that I met along the way that taught me how they lived and what was possible. So number four for me would be the money. I remember when I first started looking up single moms living on the road, and I didn't find any, right? This was 4 years ago. Now there seems to be a lot, and that makes me so happy, because no matter whether you're single or married, this is possible. So because I was a single mom, the idea of money was always a worry for me, because, you know, I only have the one income and child support, but you know, if any emergency were to pop up, it would really be on me. And so this worried me. But as soon as we started traveling, I realized that not only is it doable, but it's actually cheaper to live on the road than it is to have a home and maintain it and have the traditional family lifestyle in the United States, at least in South Florida where we were living. South Florida is really expensive. And I was lucky enough to have really affordable rent, and still it was hard to make ends meet. And then once we started traveling, I realized that it is so much more manageable, and there's a flow that goes along with it, because you kind of have choices, right? And the first couple of years we house sat and we camped, and sometimes we would stay in the car, and this gave us flexibility of not having the rent payment and the electricity and the water and whatever else comes along with having a house, right? And therefore gave me more money in my pocket for experiences. And 5, last but definitely not least, and probably the most outlandish one, because I think people hear the word The Matrix and they think of the sci-fi movie, but the truth is that if you see it from a different perspective, like the whole idea of societal norms, of these ideas that were instilled in you that caused you to create the life that you currently have. Like, this is something that pigeonholes your life or puts you in a box or prevents you from growing. And this is what I call the matrix, right? The societal norms that I was born into and the ideology I was born into. And breaking out of that was very important for me, for my happiness and my freedom. I felt like I had created a life based on ideas that weren't really mine, and I really didn't know what my ideas were because I had never really explored it. I had never really taken the time to look within myself, to understand what I like, what I enjoy, what kind of life I want to live, and my trajectory. So breaking out of the matrix was so important for me, and the reason I started traveling, because by changing my surroundings, by changing my mindset, I was able to achieve so much more and bring myself to a place of happiness just by existing, not by acquiring anything specific, not by doing anything specific, but just by existing. And this was an amazing accomplishment in my life, because happiness always seemed ever fleeing, you know, like it just seemed something that was unreachable. And thanks to pulling myself out of the situation I was in, I was able to find that happiness and change things like the snap of fingers. It was really fast, and or faster than it would have been if I would have just stayed in one place. And how do I know that this is the case? Because every time I go back, it's almost like going back into the old me. It's going back into my old life, and it feels like traveling to the past. And it almost feels like I don't recognize the place, yet I know exactly where I am because I have been there. I hated being there, and I don't want to be there again. And this has nothing to do with people that I love that are there, and that's why I keep going back. You know, we go back so the kids can see their dad and we can see our family, and we do miss them. But the life that we had created, that I don't think we miss as much. And it really took us just pulling ourselves out of it completely to understand how unhappy we were and how disconnected from ourselves we were when we were in that life. I hope this made sense to you, and I hope this was helpful, because it's truly a life that I recommend to anybody, even if just for a short time. Love you guys.
If you have any questions about any of the things I mentioned, don't hesitate to ask in the comments. And don't forget to like and follow if you want to see more of our adventures and all the things we learn along the way. Thanks for joining. Bye!